folks, today we are going to go on and we're going to have a think about George Orwell's A Hanging. Okay, now last week we looked at the British Empire, and we looked at Orwell's place within that, within the structure of the British Empire, the view to thinking about this text. We also, of course, George Orwell and his background as a writer and as a man. Okay, so hope we're bringing those ideas to the text, and it'll help us understand it more clearly. Okay, so let's have a little think first of all about the context against which A Hanging is set. Now, A Hanging is obviously a piece of prose non-fiction. Okay, it's not something George Orwell made up. It's something he witnessed. Okay, now we've mentioned before, you know, he was a British police officer in Burma, now called Myanmar. Okay, and as you know, in that role, he experienced firsthand or witnessed firsthand a lot of social inequalities that are inevitably in a country that's ruled by a foreign power, as ruled by Britain. That he witnessed or experienced went on to form lots of his written work from that time, including an essay that we're studying today, which is called A Hanging. Now, A Hanging is essentially Orwell's on many executions that he would have witnessed in his official capacity as Chief of Justice, as a policeman. Okay, so he was, through his job, you know, that would have been one of his duties to witness that this was done. Now, the effect that that had on Orwell comes through clearly to us in his writing in A Hanging, because although he appears to be just telling us a story, actually what we can glean from that story is that he becomes, through witnessing these things, becomes very much opposed to the idea of capital punishment. And this piece of writing, he's trying to get us to consider that, trying to get us for this prisoner put to death in this. The right purpose is very important. You know, when, for example, you did your persuasive essays, you purpose, you wanted to get you to agree that you would accept. In A Hanging, what Orwell is doing, he is making a social comment about capital punishment. Okay, he wants to confront that issue. Okay, and the way that he does that is through his use of language. So he uses imagery, he uses symbolism, he uses word choice, all of which is very effective in getting us to imagine what he experienced. And because we can imagine what he experienced, and because he creates a tone and techniques, we can feel sympathy for the poor. We can put ourselves in his shoes. It's all down to Orwell as a writer. You're going to have to take some on A Hanging, and what I want to do just to give you a quick reminder of how you should go about analysing any kind of comparison, like similes or metaphors, etc., etc. You need to go through the appropriate steps in order to analyse these things thoroughly. Now, it's kind of colour-coded here. We started off with our quote. So our quote from the story: we were waiting outside the condemned cells, a row of sheds fronted with double bars like small animal cages. Now, that simile was being compared to what? So literally, the denotation, the prisoner's sheds or cells, are being compared to cages used for the containment of animals. And now, what that suggests is a attitude to the treatment of the person, the way that he perceives them. So just as a very sparse, uncomfortable place, it's not somewhere we would want to stay. So that tells us that Orwell believed this was degrading. Okay, it didn't offer them very much comfort. They were literally treated like animals. Okay, now the political context, what that suggests about that, or makes us feel about that, straight away, Orwell is making this is not just treated appallingly crime, but also because he is seen as inferior to the British because of his colour, because of his culture. Okay? So we're relating sort of cultural ideas underpinning British attitudes at the time. When you are analysing language, as we have just done there, you've always linked your ideas back to the context. About context of this piece. It's all set the British Empire, the fact that order is representative of that, despite the fact that there was something wrong with the years of that. So he's criticising the British Empire, those British attitudes. Okay, so you've got to link any language that you're analysing back to that context. Okay, and if you look at the previous slide, that's really what's happening in the green bit at the bottom. Now, what you do now is begin your analysis. So if you initially paragraphs 1 and 2, think about what evidence there is for the condition of prisoners. Okay, write your equations and then add them in the way that we have to do. You know that you be used by now, having got to higher level. Okay, when you have done that, when you have analysed all the techniques that you picked out there, think about, as in the second question here, why do you think Orwell chose to include detailed description of the conditions? What does that establish for us in the beginning of this piece of writing? How did it begin to make us feel about the prisoners? Have a think about all those things that you move through. Paragraphs 1 and 2 of language we talked about. Pick out of those examples. Each case, explain the comparison being made and contribute to the writer's purpose. Okay, the writer's purpose, if you recall, was to make social comment on those inequalities. So I would refer you again to the example that we've looked at. Okay, and then you can go on and you can think about paragraph 2. Now we're moving to a slightly different aspect here. Think about how the prisoner appears in contrast with the descriptions of the guards and or jailer in paragraphs 2 and 4. So make sure you look at both those areas. Again, that contributes to the writer's purpose. Now, one of the important I think about in this piece of writing, what is it to be executed for? Now, if you've read it properly, you're going to realise actually Orwell doesn't tell us. He doesn't tell us what the prisoner has done. And essentially it's because if we knew what the prisoner had done, we would make some kind of moral judgment about that. So if the prisoner had committed a horrendous murder, we might think he deserved and colour our judgment about why the penalty should exist. You could try and put a bias might for something very minor that the prisoner is being executed, and that happened quite frequently in those days as well. We should be aware of that. But by not giving us either of those extremes or something in the middle, we must make our own judgment, or just a simple fact of the execution and what that means as human beings. Okay? So to make a conclusion, come to your conclusion that this penalty will be justified or not. That is his. Okay, so we're going to leave this, come back to and have a look next parts of the video. Thank you.